In this session, I'll be discussing about most important MCQs for triple streams. Those questions may be asked for SSC, UPSC, and various state level PSC examinations. Let's have a brief discussion one by one. First and foremost thing, all day efficiency of a transformer is the ratio of the dash. The first option is kilowatt hour output to the kilowatt hour input. Second option is kilowatt hour output to the kilowatt hour input per day. Third option is output power and input power. And the last option is input power and the output power. Among this, which would be the right answer? Option B is the right answer. That means all day efficiency of a transformer is the ratio of the kilowatt hour kWh output to the kWh input per day. Let's have a brief discussion on all day efficiency, then distribution transformer and the power transformer. Moreover, I will be comparing power transformer with the distribution transformer. So first let us check what do you mean by all day efficiency. All day efficiency is basically energy efficiency of a distribution transformer calculated for 24 hours or 1 day. Alright. A distribution transformer may have practically no load or little load during considerable period of the day, but in the evening it may go to peak. In this way, the primary of the distribution transformer is always energized irrespective of the load. That is true. Always there will be a load. Either it may be light load or heavy load. Or maybe it may be in the peak load or off peak load. Okay. Anyway, it will be operating 24/7. That's a peculiarity of distribution transformer. So now let us compare with the power transformer and distribution transformer. What are the differences between power transformer and distribution transformer? Let me move on to the next point. A power transformer doesn't come in direct contact with the customer's terminal or consumer terminal, whereas a distribution transformer must have its secondary directly connected to customer premises. That's the first peculiarity. Now let's move on to the next point. Power transformers are disconnected during light load period. So power transformer will be operating only during peak load time, or light load time it will be automatically disconnected. That's a peculiarity. Where distribution transformer will be operated 24 hours. Okay, that's the difference between power transformer and distribution transformer. Now let us have a brief discussion on one more comparative analysis. As the primary of the distribution transformer is always energized, core loss will take place continuously. In view of this, distribution transformers are designed to have very low value of core loss. That's a peculiarity of distribution transformer. So these are the major differences between power transformer and the distribution transformer. In power transformer, we calculate normal efficiency, where distribution transformer will be calculating all day efficiency. That's the main difference. Okay, you can point out these differences. It will be really useful for the examinations. Let me move on to the next question. Interpoles in DC generators are usually wound with option A, fine gauge copper wire, option B, insulating covered brass conductor, option C, heavy gauge winding wire, and option D, none of the above. So you need to know what do you mean by interpole, what is the speciality of interpole. Interpoles are mainly used for prevention of armature reaction in DC generator. So that is why we are using interpole. So normally heavy gauge winding wire are preferred for DC generators as an interpole. For winding of interpole, we prefer to have heavy gauge winding wire. So that we can say heavy gauge winding wire are normally used in interpole. Why interpoles are required? As I told, it is mainly used for preventing armature reaction in DC machine. Interpoles are connected in series with the armature winding, so that as the armature current changes, the flux due to interpole changes accordingly. That is why we are going to use interpole, and how about the connection of interpole has been given over here. So this is the peculiarity of interpole. Third question, the back EMF of a DC motor depends on the dash. Option A, shape of the conductor, option B, type of the conductor, option C, field flux, and option D, brush material. Which option is the right answer? Option C is the right answer. How can I justify the answer option C, field flux? So back EMF of the DC motor depends on field flux. How? For that purpose, we can see the equation of back EMF. So this is the standard equation for back EMF. EB, that is back EMF, that is given by phi n z by 60 into P by A, where phi is known as flux per pole, n is known as armature speed, and z is total number of armature conductor, P total number of poles, A number of armature conductor per parallel path. So these are the different terms and peculiarity of back EMF. So from this equation I can directly say that back EMF EB, that is directly correlated with phi. I mean EB is directly proportional to flux phi. So from this I can directly opt option number C is the right answer. Field flux is directly proportional to back EMF. Now let's have a brief discussion on back EMF. What do you mean by back EMF? What are the importance of back EMF? Back EMF is nothing but the EMF generated by a running motor, because it consists of a coil turning in a magnetic field. It opposes the voltage powering the motor. As you know that whenever a current carrying conductor is placed in a magnetic field, it experiences a force. That's a working principle of DC motor. So for the armature conductor, there will be a production of EMF. That particular EMF is generally known as back EMF. This back EMF, that will oppose the armature current. Both armature current and the back EMF both are entirely opposing. The back EMF maintains the motor as a self-regulating machine. That's a peculiarity of back EMF. The direction of EMF induced opposite to the applied voltage. I mean, it obeys the principle of Lenz rule. I think you must have heard about Lenz rule in electromagnetic induction. Whenever you are writing the EMF equation, E is equal to minus n into d phi by dt. So that minus is due to the principle of Lenz rule. Thereby, the EMF is known as counter EMF or back EMF. The back EMF is developed in series with the applied voltage, but opposite in direction. The back EMF opposes the current which causes it. That's why I told you that the back EMF, that is opposite to that of armature current. One more speciality, the back EMF will be always less than the terminal voltage V. So there is a relation between back EMF and terminal voltage that you can observe. The back EMF is given by V minus Ia into Ra, where Ia is known as armature current and Ra is known as armature resistance and V is known as terminal voltage. So we can conclude that the back EMF maintains the motor as a self-regulating. So without back EMF, motor will not operate. So these are the basic information related to back EMF of a DC motor. Let's discuss question number 4. The direction of rotation of a DC motor is determined by option A, Fleming's left hand rule, option B, Fleming's right hand rule, option C, corkscrew rule, option D, right hand grip rule. There are 4 options available. Which could be the right answer? The direction of rotation of DC motor is determined by Fleming's left hand rule. Let us examine what do you mean by Fleming's right hand rule and its importance, and what do you mean by Fleming's left hand thumb rule. It may be confusing. Let us clarify first. I will be moving on Fleming's right hand thumb rule. Before that, the answer is Fleming's left hand thumb rule. That is, the direction of rotation of a DC motor is determined by Fleming's left hand rule. Let us compare Fleming's right hand rule and Fleming's left hand rule. As you can see, the diagram of Fleming's right hand rule, it is concerning for the generator. You can call the Fleming's right hand thumb rule as a generator rule. Here, you have to keep your thumb, then index finger or forefinger and middle finger perpendicular to each other. Both are mutually perpendicular to each other. So such cases, the thumb gives the motion of the conductor, where the forefinger or index finger, that gives magnetic field, direction of magnetic field, where the middle finger gives the direction of induced current. So these are the peculiarity of Fleming's right hand thumb rule. It is also known as generator rule. Let us have a brief discussion on Fleming's left hand thumb rule. As you can see, keep your left hand, you have to arrange your finger like thumb, forefinger and middle finger mutually perpendicular to each other. So we can say the thumb gives the direction of force or thrust, where the middle finger gives direction of current and the forefinger or index finger gives the direction of magnetic field. So it will be really useful in the case of motor. So these are the different rule corresponding to DC motor and DC generator. Let's discuss next question. A pump may not lift the water if there is a leakage in dash delivery pipe, suction pipe, sump, overhead tank. Actually, the main components of the motor, the main segments of the motor are suction head and delivery head. If a pump may not lift the water, there will be a leakage at the suction pipe. So option B is the right answer. Pump can be divided into centrifugal pump and reciprocating pump. Mainly, it has two segments, suction head and delivery head. Normally, the problem, if you encounter any problem such as pump may not lift a water, that means there is a issues happen at suction head or suction pipe. For getting more information on pump, you can refer Textbook of Fluid Mechanics by Benjamin. Or if you want to get basic information, you can refer Basic Mechanical Engineering by Benjamin. Normally first year engineering students will refer those textbook of Benjamin. That will be very simple. You can get more information, more basic information related to pump. Moving on to the next question. A single facing preventer is specially designed for dash overload protection, no voltage protection, unbalanced voltage protection, and finally under voltage protection. Here, no voltage protection is the right answer. That means single facing preventer is specially designed for no voltage protection. So let me justify the answer. Before moving on to the particular explanation of the answer, let me explain what do we mean by single facing and what is the peculiarity of single phase preventer. What are the impacts of single facing as well? I have to explain first. We can say that the term single facing means one of the phases is open. For a three-phase system, immediately one phase is getting opening. A single phasing condition subjects an electric motor to a worst possible case of voltage unbalance. This may lead to voltage unbalance. Moreover, single phasing can occur as a result of blowing of fuse or acting of protective devices. So any of the phase may be getting opening. That particular situation is known as single phasing. It is severe condition. It is most dangerous condition. To prevent single phasing, we usually prefer the single phase preventer. You can see the peculiarity of the single phase preventer. There is an arrangement with the CT as well as relay unit. So by using the setup, you can prevent the single phasing for some extent. Okay. So this is the concept regarding a single phase and single phase preventer. Let me move on to the next question. Earth leakage circuit breakers ELCBs are specially used to disconnect the supply in dash condition. Option A, ground or earth. Option B, short circuited. Option C, open circuited. And option D, overloaded. Which would be the right answer? So the right answer is option A, ground or earth. So we can call ELCBs are specially used to disconnect the supply in ground or earth condition. So let us have brief discussion on ELCB, MCB, RCB, etc. So we have to know some good information regarding those protective devices. So let me explain some basics on ELCB first. An earth leakage circuit breaker, you can call ELCB, is a safety device used in electrical installations with a high earth impedance to prevent shock. It detects small stray voltages on a metal enclosure of electrical equipments and interrupts the circuit if any dangerous voltage is detected. So that is why we are going to use ELCBs. So let's have a brief discussion on miniature circuit breaker. So you can call MCB. MCB is known as miniature circuit breaker. Okay, the main purpose of MCB is to protect the electrical wires, devices, appliances, etc. from overcurrent so as to prevent any kind of damage, fire hazardous or electrical hazardous, etc. MCBs are quite easy and much safer to handle. It is also quickly restore the supply of current. It makes and breaks the circuit. It is basically an electromechanical device. It makes and breaks the circuit. So that's a specialty of MCB. For household application, this MCB is most appropriate. You can see the diagram. It is designed by ABB, one of the company ABB. Now let's discuss about the second type of devices, that is known as molded case circuit breaker. Short form we can call MCCB. So the main purpose of MCCB are to prevent short circuit faults, to prevent overloaded condition, to protect the devices against overloaded condition, and it can also be used for switching circuits. Normally, the braking capacity is more. The braking capacity is more in case of molded case circuit breaker. Normally, it prefer to use at the industrial area rather than household application. Why? Because the making and breaking capacity is more in case of MCCB. Usually, this kind of circuit breaker will be rated in terms of MVA. Rating of the circuit breaker can be expressed as MVA. Okay. Some more important information regarding RCB I have given in the slide. RCCB is nothing but residual current circuit breaker. Okay, the peculiarity of residual circuit breakers are to disconnect the circuit whether there is a leakage of current flow from a human body or the current flow is not balanced between the phase conductors. At that time, RCB is going to act. Similarly, it ensures the protection against electrical shock or electrocution caused by direct contacts. Similarly, RCB is usually used in series with the MCB. So both RCB and MCB will act together. Okay, it is a collective combination. It is one of the best combination to protect the equipments against overload and against leakage current, etc. By using RCB, it can protect leakage current at the range of 3100 milliampere and 200 milliampere. That much of range can be protected with the help of RCCB. Full form of RCB is residual current circuit breaker. The comparison between RCB and ELCB have been given in the next slide. As you can see, the diagram of earth leakage circuit breaker. These devices have the same function as the residual current circuit breaker. Then what is the difference? But they are voltage sensor devices. However, the ELCB is old technology and it's no more in common use. The RCCB has been taken center stage since it's current sensitive devices and it has better advantage over ELCB. There is a better comparison between ELCB and RCB. You can directly read from the slide. Okay, so nowadays we prefer RCB in spite of using ELCB. Alright, so let's have a brief discussion on the next portion. Question number 8. Synchronous motor requires dash DC supply, AC supply, both AC and DC supply and permanent magnet. The right answer is, at the beginning, we need DC supply in case of synchronous motor. So that both AC and DC, basically synchronous motor is a AC motor. So at the beginning we require DC supply. To synchronize rotor speed with respect to stator field, we require a DC supply. Option number C is the right answer. So we can say that synchronous motor require both AC and DC supply. I have given some points related to synchronous motor over here. A synchronous electric motor is an AC motor in which at a steady state the rotation of shaft is synchronized with the frequency of the supply current. The rotation period is exactly equal to an integral number of AC cycles. This is a peculiarity of synchronous motor. Moving on to question number 9. A material that is slightly repelled by a magnet is called dash. Option A, magnetic material. Option B, paramagnetic material. Option C, diamagnetic material. And option D, ferromagnetic material. This could be the right answer. Option C is the right answer. A material that is slightly repelled by a magnet is generally known as diamagnetic material. One of the most important question. So, a magnetic properties of a matter are associated with the spinning motion of the electrons in third shell of the atomic structure. That is the reason for the magnetic property. Now, magnetic material can be classified into 3. That is paramagnetic material, diamagnetic material and ferromagnetic material. For every competitive examination, you can expect any of the questions related to this magnetic material. It is a confusing area. So to get rid of confusion, let us compare the properties of 3 types of magnetic material. Let us move on the next slide and let us clarify the classification of 3 types of magnetic material. So magnetic materials can be classified as ferromagnetic material, paramagnetic material and diamagnetic material. In the first column, you can see different properties have been given. Let us look at the first property regarding the state, existence, regarding the state. Ferromagnetic materials are usually in solid state, where paramagnetic materials are solid, liquid or gaseous state. Similarly, regarding diamagnetic material, it may be in solid, liquid or gaseous state. But ferromagnetic materials are usually in solid state. Regarding the effect of magnet, it strongly attracts by the magnet. In case of ferromagnetic material, those materials are strongly attracted by the magnetic, where paramagnetic materials, it weakly attracted by a magnet. Similarly, regarding diamagnetic material, it weakly repelled by a magnet. That's a speciality of diamagnetic material. Moving on to behavior under non-uniform field. In ferromagnetic material, it tends to move from a low to high field region. Similarly, regarding paramagnetic material, it tends to move from low to high field region. But looking at the diamagnetic material, we can observe that it tends to move from a high to low region. Regarding this property, diamagnetic material is one of the odd man out. Let's look at behavior under external field. Let's look at the property, let's look at the peculiarity of ferromagnetic material. They preserve the magnetic properties after the external field is removed. That is true. Regarding paramagnetic material, they do not preserve the magnetic properties once the external field is removed. Where diamagnetic material, they do not preserve the magnetic properties once the external field is removed. So this has to be compared. Now regarding the temperature, above Curie point, it becomes a paramagnetic. Regarding paramagnetic material, with the rise of temperature, it becomes diamagnetic. There is no effect, there is no temperature effect for diamagnetic material. Regarding permeability, permeability is nothing but ability of a magnetic material to pass the magnetic field or magnetic flux. That property is known as permeability. Permeability is very high for ferromagnetic material, but regarding paramagnetic material, it is little higher than unity. But permeability is very less for diamagnetic material, little less than unity. Regarding the susceptibility, looking at the susceptibility, very high and positive for ferromagnetic material, where in the diamagnetic material, little less than unity and negative. But regarding the paramagnetic material, susceptibility is little greater than unity and positive. So these are the peculiarity regarding susceptibility. Could you list out some examples for ferromagnetic material? Yes, iron, nickel and cobalt are the basic examples of ferromagnetic material, where lithium, tantalum, magnesium are belongs to paramagnetic material. Let's look at some examples of diamagnetic material. Copper, silver, gold, those examples are belong to diamagnetic material. I hope you understood. This is most important and please don't leave the particular area. Questions may be asked in any manner, so be ready for that. Let's move on. Question number 10. A tongue tester is an instrument having dash: current transformer with ammeter, potential transformer, miniature transformer. The right answer for this question is current transformer with ammeter. So let us inspect some important information regarding tongue tester. An electrical tongue tester is also known as clamp meter, which measures the current in a circuit in amperes, which is a measurement of electrons movement over a point during a given time period. So that's a speciality of tongue tester, or you can call clamp meter. You can observe the diagram of tongue tester. The first part, upper part, you can see this is a current transformer unit, CT unit. In the bottom portion, you can see ammeter unit. One of the biggest advantage for the equipment is that one may take the measurement of high value of current even without powering off or shutting down the circuitry under test. Moreover, by using the device, we are not touching the conductor or any type of circuit. Indirectly, we will be measuring. There is no direct physical contact. So indirectly we are going to manipulate. But some error will be occurred, so that we can say that accuracy is somewhat poor in case of tongue tester, or you can call clamp meter. That is only the difficulty. But anyway, we will be getting the approximate reading. So it is really useful. So we discussed 10 questions. This may be asked for most important competitive examination. If you are having any doubts regarding those discussion, kindly put up in the comment box. Surely I will be reverting back. So thank you for watching this video. Please share and don't forget to subscribe. Those who are preparing for non-technical examination, you can refer my one more channel, namely Winners Capsule. Please watch, share and subscribe for this channel also. I need your continuous support. Thank you very much.